Hello, this is Bookish Talk again, one of iBookBinding's podcasts, and we started a series dedicated to the bindings made for the shortlisted books of the Booker Prize this year. And today our guest is Kate Holland. Hi, Kate. My co-host is Pavel. He joins us from Moscow as usual. Hi, Pavel. Well, let's talk about the binding of the book. The book you've made the binding for was The Promise by Damon Galgut, or I'm not sure if I'm pronouncing the surname correctly.
Sounds good.
But well, that's the book that won the prize, and you've made the binding for it. I saw some photos of the process on your Facebook, and I guess on Instagram in the first place. And well, that as usual, some amazing photos and some amazing things you've been doing there. But we want to learn about it from you in the first place.
No, well, thank you for inviting me, as always. So do you want to talk about the technique or the imagery or just everything?
Well, just everything. I don't know. Maybe starting with the moment when you got the commission, when you found out that you'll be making a binding for this book, and
obviously the first thing we've got to do is read the book. So that's always an exciting time, because you can do it guilt-free. You can just sit down during working hours and read a book. And it's a story about a white family in apartheid era South Africa, and so mid-1980s. And they have the mother of the family is dying, and they have a black maid servant, and the mother on her deathbed promises the house on their plot of land to the black maid servant. But it does not get passed on, mainly because at that point black people couldn't own property. And so then it's basically it's following the family through their deaths. So the mother dies, and then I can't remember now the order of who dies for next, but the son and the daughter, or the husband. But each time some of the family member dies, it's another decade on, and still that maidservant does not receive her house, and that promise is never kept. And it's following South Africa as it's going through that sort of tumultuous political period, but looking at it from a sort of microcosm of a white family who are blatantly racist and open about being, the language that they use is really quite shocking to us nowadays. And the final scene is almost brought up to date, and the daughter offers the maid servant, she's called Salome, the house, and she's just like, it's too late, I've woken up, I've realized that you guys never even realized who I was, or didn't even know my name, or didn't, so it's but it's told in this wonderful sort of narrative of, it's like a sort of film, it's like a cinematic experience. So the narrative moves from one person to another, or it flies in as a ghost, or it's a hyena, or it's not, it's a really, really lovely, subtle book. It's not obvious, and it's not particularly angry or political, or it's just telling the story, but you understand what he's trying to tell you. Anyway, I hope I've explained that.
And is the dramatic landscape that you feature on the cover central to the plot, or is it just the setting? Why did you stop on this particular?
It's very central to the plot, in that the farmstead where the family live is set in the South African veldt, the high veldt, which is the grassland, and then there's a particular, the kopje, which is the hill behind the house that the little girl runs to, and she's always trying to escape from her family and go to the hill. And there's also, on that hill, there is a lightning tree, and she as a child was struck by lightning. So that's a very sort of central theme that the author keeps returning to within the book. And also the grass is a very central thing. He's always talking about the grass, the sound of the grass as you walk around it, the sound of it moving, the color of it. So a lot of the imagery that I used in the book is around that you know, that huge landscape that you get in South Africa, the big skies and the thunderstorms that come in from nowhere. And I just love that. I have always wanted to do something with yellow and grey. I just love that combination of colours. So it just fit quite well. And I'd been looking at Pearneath paintings as well, sort of a year or two ago, completely randomly, who's I can't remember, I think it's Jacob, or anyway, I can't remember his Christian name, I'm afraid, but he's a very, very famous South African artist. And he does a lot of these big, wide landscapes, distant hills, big thunderstorms rolling in. So that was the initial inspiration for it.
And what are those black and white photographs that you used?
So the black and white photographs are taken by a very well-known South African photographer called Gideon Mendel. And within the book, there's a fairly pivotal moment where the son, who's on conscription, he's white, he's a soldier, and he has shot a black woman who's picked up a stone and is about to throw it at him. And it's the guilt that he suffers, and then he becomes an alcoholic and a drug addict, and you know, and then it goes down, everything goes downhill from there. But that pivotal moment, and I was just researching, and it was in Atteridgeville, which is a township in South Africa. It was in 1985, and I was just Googling. You know, you read the book and then you Google around. I'm like, you know, it'd be nice if I could go and pick up books and look at books, but obviously, you know, the internet has not all the answers, but some answers. And I came upon this image, and then there was a white soldier holding up a rifle, about to take aim at a black woman who's picking up a stone, about to throw it at him. And I just felt, God, the author must have seen this picture. It was quite a well-known series of photographs. So I actually then had to try and get hold of the photographer, and he is currently traveling around the world. He's a very big climate change activist, and so he's been photographing the wildfires in Greece and the floods. He's got a very famous series of flood victims where they're all sort of up to their necks in water, and so I was trying to get hold of him, but he's obviously in the middle of, you know, wherever. And then I was complaining to my husband. I was like, I can't get hold of this guy, I need his permission. He said, oh, I worked with him last year on a film, and I've got, here's his mobile number. And so that was great. So I managed to A, get permission, and B, you know, confirm that this was exactly the right time and place for that imagery.
That's amazing how it works. And by the way, it sort of brings us to one of the topics that we wanted to discuss on our podcast for quite a long time. Well, it's not the proper place, I guess, to discuss it in full today, but the issues of copyrights and proper use of visual materials in your bindings, because that's something I see bookbinders ask from time to time, or I see bookbinders do without really knowing if they have rights or ability to use some imagery or something like that in their designs. And well, as you described, you need to get a permission if there is a photo or I don't know any drawing or anything like that. You need to get a permission because it's a copyrighted material more often than not, and that's a serious issue. And well, if you're making a book for yourself, obviously, and not for sale, nobody will find it. No, nobody will see it, or not enough people will see it, and that's sort of okay. But if you are making something that's openly shown, exhibited, sold, or something like that, you definitely need to.
I definitely have a responsibility to credit, and quite often I'll take images from picture libraries where you pay the licensing fee, and then you have the use of that. But quite often also you just and artists are very helpful, and they are generally happy to have their images used as long as they're properly credited. And I do increasingly use contemporary photography within my bindings, because quite often you can find political themes that are still going on today that were going on in the past. And I did it with the Grapes of Wrath. You know, they take a contemporary image which shows that there's still starvation in Central California Valley today, and through migrants, nothing's changed. But yeah, But yeah, you've got to cover yourself.
And how do you acknowledge other artists' works? Do you include some kind of byline in the book itself, or is it only on the website? What's the best practice here?
Maybe in the sort of catalogue description, I would do it. I don't include it in the book, but I do with each book. I do a binder's description, so that is a separate piece of paper, and it will have the the description, the thinking behind the design, anything like any sort of copyright or artist's permission that I need to include. And it's also good from the point of view of, in the future, if the book falls apart or you've used something that maybe it degrades it quicker than something else, or then conservators will know what you've put into it, so they know how to fix it.
That's another thing that all the conservators we talk to always mention, that document your bindings, document everything about what you do, because that will ensure it's longer life. Yeah.
I mean, obviously try and use, acid-free and best quality materials and all the rest of it. But sometimes I've used, I probably shouldn't admit this in public. So, I use like car body spray on the edges of a book, and I actually saw it the other day, and it still looks absolutely fine. But that was 10 years ago, so it's it's still there. But yeah, it's I know one binder who says he uses whatever he get hold of it, because then that giving conservators work in the future. If we.
Yeah, definitely. Can you talk us a bit more about through your probably initial creative process, and how you decided to use the materials you used, and I also wanted to ask you to talk more about the lightning bolt, about the lightning, because I saw the videos on your Instagram how you tooled the lightning, and I guess the way it was tooled is the reason for its look, because it's not a even surface. It's a sort of connection of smaller pieces tooled together, millimeter by millimeter or something like that. So could you please talk about it?
Sure. Well, I generally do use foil for tooling. I can use gold leaf, but I find foil is obviously quicker and simpler, and every color under the rainbow, and it gives you the freedom to choose whatever color you want and whatever effect you want. So if I want to, for instance, that lightning bolt, I would draw the whatever shape I want onto Japanese tissue paper, and then I lay the foil on the leather, Japanese tissue paper on top. And then this is my top secret tip, which I'm going to tell everybody, is you take masking tape, just old white masking tape, and you layer it all over the image, so you can still see the image through the masking tape. But when you put the tool on it, the tool flows, it's not stilted, it flows quite smoothly over the masking tape. And so each little jagged angle is one impression of the tool, so you're moving your hand as you change direction. And I like the handmadeness, and that each impression is purposeful. So yeah, so you take each tiny little, so I've got several tools that I've made, and they vary in thickness and in length. And I find the shorter they are, it's almost like you're writing with a pen, but it's about a sort of 3-4 millimeter long tool. And so you're following the line. I then would take off the foil and the tissue and the masking tape, so to reveal what I've got. And you should have most of the foil tooled image on your book there, but it will then need sharpening up. So I then use just the foil and the tool, and visually just place the tool in the image to get a better impression. And I'll probably do that 2 or 3 times so that it's a clean line.
I guess if you just use the metal plate to impress this design, it would have looked absolutely differently.
It'd be completely flat.
Yeah.
And that texture is a whole integral part of the the look, definitely.
Yeah, it changes the look absolutely. So that's
and you get, as you move it, you get, you know, the different surfaces as they you know, the different angles of the surfaces, the light plays on it. So if you had one flat surface and the light's just hitting it in one direction, you don't get the same you know, interest.
So how much time did you have to spend on the lightning?
On the lightning bolt, it's probably about a day or so of going over and over, and until you've got it just how you want it. I probably spent more time sanding leather though than anything on that book, because there's one giant scarf joint going across from the yellow and the grey. So the grey is a sort of dyed fair calf, and the underneath is first offset dye printed, and then it's mono printed, and then it was dyed, and then it was chamfered, and then they were glued together, and then they were shaved off from the back so that it becomes one piece. Does that make sense? There's a lot going on in something that looks really simple.
What about the grass, both on the cover and on the end paper?
That's mono printing.
What's that?
So I think I've talked about this before. I have a real issue with the fact that I wasn't allowed to do art at school, and so I've taken myself, I do printmaking evening classes, and I was taught how to do mono printing, and I was like, oh, I can use this, is great. My first book, I was using this technique, and you ink up whatever it is that you want to print with. So I have some grasses out in my garden, you lay them on a plate, you ink them up, you then print with that, you then take off the inked grasses and you lay them onto a paper, and that's a second print that you can make with that. So they talk a lot about bodily, what's the word, effluence, so piss and shit and puke, as quite a lot of that is going on in the book. So the M papers were dyed to look like that. I wanted them to look quite bodily, and then printed the grasses on top, so it's that same color. But then you're left with this other plate, which is the sort of negative of that plate, and that's what was used to print the yellow grass on the outside of the book. It's a fairly simple process. I don't know if I've really explained it very succinctly.
But it can only give one impression.
Yeah.
So it's unique, and it can't be anything but unique. Yeah.
And once it's done, once you've printed with it once, that's you have to start all over again.
And what's about the tree? Because it also has this pattern of leaves or something. How do you make the tree?
So that is matte black foil I started with, and then I've got this brilliant stuff. There's an artist called Stuart Semple, and he produces this. It's a matte black acrylic paint, and it's the mattest, blackest paint available on the market. He also does the most mirror-like paint, or the glowiest paint, or the pinkest paint, and they're really. So I don't work for him. I'm not advertising on his behalf. But, so it's a really, and so I paint that in, and it's matte black foil and matte black paint, and then tooled over the top as well to give that texture.
Wasn't it he who had this sort of feud with the person who holds rights to Black is Black or something like that? Yeah, that's that.
When you buy any of his paints, you have to sign a form saying, I am not Anish Kapoor and I'm not buying your paint, in order to copy
it. That's an amazing story on its own.
So you are using a blacker paint than Anish Kapoor does, and you also use the same diamonds that Damien Hirst used.
Yeah, well, go with the grades.
And what about the book edges? You also painted them in scatological colors.
Yes, scatological is a good word. Thank you. Yes, it's bodily. yeah, it's not obvious, but now I've told everyone it is.
Because my first reaction was that it's the burnt out color of the welt. I imagine something like at the height of the summer, it probably looks like that.
Well, it's both, isn't it? It's the same colors. It's the yellows and the browns and the, yeah.
So all in all, the whole process took you how long?
Well, we got the book, we had about 6 weeks to do it, but in that 6 weeks I also had 2 weeks of teaching and kids off on half term for 2 weeks, and so my actual time that I was like could do any binding got shorter and shorter, but so it was quite tight at the end. But it's, yeah, so it's probably about 2 or 3 weeks full on, probably. Yeah, it's quite an intense thing, the booker, because normally when you're doing a binding, you know, you have time to sort of, you know, you'll get your creative juices flowing and then make prototypes and then make mistakes and then go back. And so it's a really intense period of and you've got to get it right. You haven't really got time to, and I always try and seem to do something completely different. You know, it's not like, you know, when you're told when you have a dinner party, you must always cook a dish that you've cooked before, never try something new on your guests. And I have this problem with the Booker Prize. I always seem to do something completely new that I've never done before. So yeah, I set myself challenges.
So which parts were completely new this time?
Oh, I'm trying to think. Actually, now having said that, which bits were new? Probably the scarf joint, and there was a sort of triple back paired onlay, and it was just getting it, marrying it up and getting it absolutely flat. But I have done books which are 4 books all hinged so that they come back, sort of fit back on themselves as a sort of like a star. And another one, yeah, it's not the time to try something new.
So by now you've done quite a few of book bindings. Is it getting easier? Are you getting more confident in your process?
Well, that's, I suppose, yes, I'm getting faster, which is very useful. And I remember the times it took me a whole year to do a design binding. So, but you know, you've got to get quicker in order to make a living. And so yes, and I think the actual technical side of most of the technical side I'm fairly okay with now. And that having the technical side sorted frees up your creative side. So you suddenly you're not worrying about how I'm going to sew the M-band. You're actually thinking about what colors am I going to use, or what different effects can I achieve by, you know, you're not actually just concerned about the minutiae of the technical side of things.
When we discussed Mark Cochrom's binding, we asked him about the financial part of the process, and he said that it pays well, but not well enough. That for the involvement that you need for the process, it's more of a reputation thing that why do you do it, basically?
It's an honor, you know. You do things, people get you to do things cheaper because you should be really, really honored to be part of whatever it is that they're asking you to be part of. And could be deemed to be a bit unfair getting artists to do stuff cheaply, because it's such a big, exciting, big name thing. And yes, you get some good publicity from it, and yes, you can, you know, boast about it, and you know, but it's less money than I would charge a private client. Yeah.
And when you say reputation recognition, in what circles? Is it purely among your colleagues, or other people in the business, say collectors or booksellers, who follow that kind of work?
Well, it was interesting this year, really, for the first time, the Booker Prize actually made a bit of a thing about the book bindings, that, you know, that these were being made individually for the authors, and they had a whole, on their website there's a whole big section devoted to the book bindings. Normally you go to the Booker Prize and your books will be there on a plinth, but no one's looking at them. They're all down the other end drinking champagne and patting each other on the back. And so yes, it's maybe some people outside the bookbinding world will have noticed. I don't know. It's we're still waiting for people outside the bookbinding world to notice us. We keep shouting.
Okay, hopefully this will happen once. But I also we asked Mark a tricky question, and I also wanted to ask you a different tricky question. I don't know, maybe it's not tricky, but is it customer that the person who is offered to make a book binding agrees? So is that an offer you can't refuse, or is it does it often happen that a person refuses and the designer bookbinders have to look for another person, another bookbinder who will make this binding? How does it work? If you know about it, if you don't know.
Well, the process of being chosen is, first we have to be a fellow of DB. And then every year it's put out to the fellows who would like to be involved in the Booker binding this year. And I don't know how many people offer up their services. But then from whatever that pool of people who've offered, 6 are chosen by one of our fellows who works very closely with the Booker Prize. And she is the one who decides who gets what title. And I haven't had any, I've never heard of anyone refusing a title, saying, I don't want that one. You can express an interest in ones that you like the look of before she makes the choice. But yeah, I'm very glad I got this one because it's just a really interesting book. And
I think one of our guests told us that they read a few of the books in advance, and they always guessed with at least one of them that it will be on the list. Did you read anything in advance?
Well, I listen to a lot of audiobooks because you can read and work at the same time. So it's really, I probably listened to about 4 or 5. And actually the promise was not one of them, so you don't know. So I've listened to lots of books and gained lots of knowledge of Booker nominated books, but none of any use to the work I had to do.
Okay, I see. I guess we'll finish our podcast somewhere here. I only wanted to ask you about your current state of affairs, classes, how everything is going after COVID. Is it getting better and better? And probably we will talk about it during our holiday special, and I'm not sure which one will be published first, but anyway, how's it going for you?
Yeah, good. No, lots of commissions. Teaching's pretty much back. I was just been at Westdean yesterday. And we got to wear masks if we're moving around, but other than that, that's it's pretty much back to normal.
And kids are no longer home, I assume.
Kids are back at school. Great. So yes, I had to do home education as well as I didn't stop working through the lockdown, and we had home education, and it was busy, let's say.
Okay. Okay, good, great, good to hear that, and I hope it will only get better, from now on, and the stuff finally, comes to something, some stable situation. Well, thanks a lot, Kate, for joining us today and for talking about this amazing binding, the book that won the Booker Prize, and I hope to see you next time on our podcast. Well, we definitely will see you during our holiday special, but to talk about some other bindings or some other bookish things. As usual, many thanks to all our viewers or all the members of our community, especially to our Patreon patrons who help us with their money, because thanks to your pledges, we can pay for editing of these videos, and without your support we wouldn't be able to do that. So please check the link below and probably join the crowd on Patreon. Pledges start with only $1, €1 or £1, depending on your country, but we would gladly accept higher pledges as well. So feel free to do that, and subscribe, like, I don't know what else, and see you next time. Thanks a lot, Kate.
Thank you. Bye.
Bye.
Bye.